Hi everyone and welcome to our webinar on emerging trends in financial crime. My name is Thais Kroes, compliance analyst at Simon Consulting, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. I'm excited to have three experts with us today. Ingrid van Burg, compliance specialist at Bitonic, Christina Dudley, money laundering reporting officer and compliance officer based in Malta, and Pierre Simon, managing director and principal consultant at Simon Consulting. Our panelists will discuss some of the latest trends in financial crime, including scams in the crypto space, the role of technology and AI, and sanction compliance. Thank you for joining us today. I look forward to a lively and informative session. To start our discussion, I'd like to ask each of our panelists, what are the most significant emerging trends in financial crime that you are seeing in your work as a compliance professional? Let's start with you, Pierre.
I think what we have seen lately, the last at least 1.5 to 2 years in the broader scope, is of course the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Of course, for those professionals that are active already in the AML space, we have had these topics for a couple of years already, but at least the last year, we had a lot more discussions and developments in use of artificial intelligence more in the generative space. So I think that's definitely one of the main trends that I've seen lately.
So I would say cybercrime and digital fraud, obviously, because most criminals are placing reliance on digital platforms. So obviously, they are becoming more creative when it comes to identity theft, phishing attacks. So I would say mostly that is something that I come across a lot. And obviously with the emerging technologies that we have, such as obviously cryptocurrency exchanges, this is becoming more common, and even just for a simple onboarding process as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have to agree. We see a lot of threats from AI and deepfake also in our line of business. But apart from that, we also encounter a lot of broker scams. Well, there are a lot of scams, but I'll just mention the three we most see. Which is, like I said, the broker scam, we have the recovery scam and the dating scams. So a broker scam is when you get a call from someone you just don't know, telling you that they are from a reputable company, and you can find them on LinkedIn or a website of the company, and they have a very good opportunity for you. Most of the time, these people are very smooth talkers, and they kind of seduce you to listen to them more and listen to their story, which is, of course, beautiful and full of great opportunity, and you're going to make a lot of money most of the time. So there are some different approaches. Mostly they will telephone you, but sometimes they will just send you a direct message via social media. That could also be LinkedIn or sometimes Facebook or Twitter, or, well, X is it now. So these channels. They try to establish a lot of trust first, and then they will try to get you to invest in their scam. And at first, they will also just say, oh, you just have to invest a small amount, like 500 euros in Bitcoin, for example, or another cryptocurrency. And once you get in, they won't let you go. So they will ask you for more investments because the opportunity is nice and great, and you will earn so much money.
All right. Okay. Interesting. That was the broker scam. How about the recovery scam?
Yeah, the recovery scam is mostly when they have already scammed you. They will come back and scam you with this one. Also, they will say, oh, we are from a good company. We have a great track record in retrieving a lot of funds from people who are scammed. and you only have to pay this and that amount at first, and we will help you to get your money back. Well, that's the recovery scam. It's also very known among scammers that if they can fool you once, they're going to fool you twice. Or at least they're going to try.
All right. Okay. Do you have maybe an example for us, which you encountered maybe in your work?
Well, recovery scams, we usually see that when most of the time we get a new client. So someone new on our platform, and they will buy a small amount of Bitcoin, most of the time kind of a funny amount, like 1,321 euros, because that's supposedly the percentage of the amount they're going to get back. So mostly 5% or 10% of the whole amount that you invested in the first scam. And also we see, well, scammers use the same wallet addresses a few times. So we see that in our transaction monitoring a lot of times. And then we will always, when we see it, we will always contact the customer and say, we think you are being scammed, so we're not going to forward your payment. So that's what happens.
Very interesting. All right. Could you also elaborate more on the dating scam?
Yeah, it's a variation of the investment scam, but then they just try to seduce you first in a relationship, and then they're gonna dish up all kinds of personal problems, loss of a job, or hospital bills, or well, whatever you can think of that will seduce people to send money to these people. And then again, when they first got you, at that point, you're going to send money, they will ask for more and more. So that's, well, typical of a romance scam. Yeah.
All right. So they're trying to first establish a romantic or emotional bond and then scam you. That's harsh.
That's really harsh.
Yeah.
Because well, a lot of people think, oh, I found the person for me. I found the love of my life, or whatever you want to use to describe it, and then they just scam you, which is really hard. And they also use fake profiles. So they will set up a profile, for example, on Facebook with a photo which is nothing like them. They will try to seduce you into a relationship, a fake relationship.
Fake relationship. Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
All right. I assume with the digital age that document fraud is easier to conduct. So I would like to ask Christina, could you tell us more of the technological impact on document fraud with the technological developments?
Sure. Well, obviously, criminals are becoming more professional at this, and they are also learning how to change the metadata of images. So usually, it's much harder to obviously identify these fraudulent documentation, because many times they manage to hide a lot of the properties of the document. So you wouldn't know where the picture was taken, at what time, and with what device. So yes, there is this definite impact that obviously the criminals are learning as obviously we move on, and they are adopting these methods so that they try and sort of trick the person behind the screen, in front of the screen, when verifying the documentation. So that is obviously something that I think is mostly common when it comes to digital documentation. And because obviously you receive scanned images, so it is much difficult to compare a scanned image versus a physical image, because a physical image can show you the sort of the security features. Like imagine a passport, you can see all security features when compared to sort of the website that shows the original passport. So it's becoming very tricky to see what is missing and whether maybe that this is sort of a bad quality image or whether that is a potential for forged documentation.
Yeah, okay. And do you also encounter the same problems, Ingrid?
Yeah, it depends on what tool we use. So our customers can get their identity verified by a tool in which we read the chip. So when we do that, it's hardly ever something fake. But in some instances, people just scan their identity card or passport, and then sometimes we encounter fake documents.
Yeah, so I think in general, if you look at the scams which were mentioned, but also the identity theft and other fraud topics, a lot of those fraud related topics, they're not per se new, but they're using new technology and variations on existing typologies or existing forms of crime. So one of the things that I've seen, at least in looking at the financial sector, is that there's also a challenge, and we didn't address that yet. There's also a privacy issue sometimes, or at least the balancing act between which information can you actually capture, like scans. There were a lot of discussions. Can you actually, when you onboard or onboard a new client, which documents do you need to see and what do you need to capture? Can you capture a scan? Can you make a copy of a passport or ID card? So those can also be challenges, but I think using technology also for identifying the clients and verifying the identity, there's a lot of new technology out there which can really be helpful in tracking indeed fraudulent cases or of identity theft.
How can we as professionals collaborate more effectively to effectively combat the financial crime? Pierre, I would like to start with you.
Yeah, I think financial crime in itself is a pretty broad definition. Of course, it depends on what how you define financial crime. But mostly, if you look at least in the regulated businesses, then it's mostly focusing on anti-money laundering, countering financing of terrorism, sanctions. So those are the most common forms, at least the best known forms of financial crime in the regulated businesses. Well, there, of course, we see a lot of interesting developments in regards to how to tackle those, and we see a lot of collaborations as well. If you look, for instance, on specifically AML, anti-money laundering, we see, of course, that's the whole setup, the whole structure is that every institution independently needs to do some checks. So we need to identify our clients, verify the identity, conduct transaction monitoring. We need to do reporting to local authorities, etc. But of course, nowadays, nobody has a bank account or even a wallet at one provider. You have multiple providers. So by limiting the institutions by doing them themselves, it is a limiting factor. So collaboration is definitely something that's being looked at now. And there are a lot of examples as well there. Both from a private and public perspective in regards to the collaborations, but also within the private sector. I know, for instance, in the Netherlands, if you look at the banking sector, they have some collaborations on monitoring transactions, of course, based on the privacy obligations, GDPR. Not every information can be shared, but at least they can look at transactions combinedly and look at specific typologies on a broader scope than if you do it as an individual institution. So that's definitely, I think, the way to go as well, within the boundaries of the legal implications. But definitely there's a lot of room for collaboration.
Collaboration, yes. What do you think about that, Ingrid?
Well, the Dutch crypto companies have an online meeting every month, in which we discuss what kind of fraud and scams we have seen in the month before that. So we try to keep our colleagues, we call them, informed about what happens, because we mostly see that they try the scam with one company, and then when the company sees the scam, they will hop on to another. So we try to keep each other informed. I think that's really important. Furthermore, I think Bitonic is one of the companies that is very protective of their clients' information. So the initiative that Pierre mentioned is something I don't really see happening within the crypto sector. I know banks are very happy with the initiative. I'm not really excited about it, but purely from a privacy perspective.
Well, yes, I would say better collaboration, obviously, with law enforcement and regulatory authorities, because obviously this helps building, obviously, knowledge on what is happening actually in your country and also internationally. Reporting suspicious activity promptly as well will help sort of the authorities investigate promptly, and it's more likely to be involved sort of and we collaborate effectively and get better results as a country. And also, I think, participate in industry working groups, sort of depending the area you work in. For example, in our case, electronic money institution forums, which usually discuss upcoming regulations and directives. And you'll obviously meet with colleagues, and obviously you can share and learn from your peers in similar organizations.
And I think also to add on that, and I think it's traditionally, at least within the compliance field, the focus was more on the regulatory aspects. So what does the law require us to do? But luckily, and I'm really happy to see those developments as well, there is more focus on the actual crime. So I think, as Ingrid also mentioned, the different forms of scams, and having interactions, really understanding how actually criminals work, how the crime actually happens. Because if you don't understand the crime itself and only focus on, we need to check the box, we need to identify our clients, we need to monitor transactions, but you don't know what to look for. So it's really key to understand the actual crimes. And what crimes, of course, they change constantly. People are creative, especially criminals. They have extremely creative minds. So by really understanding those developments and sharing, I think, as Ingrid mentioned, and also Christina, I think that's definitely key in sharing with the sector, with other compliance professionals, sharing knowledge. That will definitely help. I think that's one of the best ways of collaboration.
Christina, how do you feel that the regulations that are brought to life are impacting your work? Do you like it, or do you feel restricted?
Well, I mean, every day I think there's a new regulation or upcoming directive.
Yeah.
I don't think I like it, no, but obviously they serve as a guidance, because without them, obviously, it would be much more difficult for the compliance officer or the legal representative to sort of implement and adopt the strategy that is required to be compliant with the regulation. So in our case, for example, in Malta, we have sort of a set of implementing procedures, usually covering mostly AML, CFT, which sort of go into detail and explain the regulation. And sometimes also there are also fact sheets and guidance documents that are shared with us from the local regulator, which also help sort of explaining to the team what is required, because usually that is the hardest part, sort of how to explain internally what needs to be changed, or sort of what additional measures that need to be taken on board. So I would say regulation in general helps, obviously, to get get your house in order, and as a compliance check, as health check as well. And obviously, it aims to keep the bad players out. So I think it's definitely needed.
Needed, yeah. Of course, it's not fun because every day everything is changing constantly new rules. How do you feel about it, Ingrid? About the regulations that put in place?
Well, regulation is good. But I constantly fear for overstepping privacy boundaries, because that's the continuous discussion when you talk about fighting money laundering and financial crime. What can we what can we do, and where do we have to stop? And sometimes I get the feeling they cross the border of when we need to stop.
Yeah,
so that's a concern.
Yeah, understandable, definitely. And you, Pierre, how do you feel about it?
I think I share the opinion that the regulation in itself is not bad, of course, but sometimes, and I think it's a process. Sometimes the people that are drafting up new obligations do not always understand how it works in practice. So I think that can be a challenge. And of course, there's so many laws and regulations. Some of them, and as I mentioned at the beginning, it can be a balancing act. So from a financial crime perspective, if you want to catch the bad guys, just to say it like that, then of course a lot of people would like to have a lot of authority and a lot of tools to be able to do it. But then again, and not everyone is a criminal. So then you have the challenge with privacy. So you need to have a balancing act. And I think what is one of the biggest challenges, at least with laws and regulations, is not per se that it's seen as bad, but it changes so quickly, which on the one hand is logical, but it can also be challenging. So I know a lot of organizations that are still working on implementing previously published laws and regulations, and already there is news of something new coming. So it's constantly changing. So I think that is the biggest challenge there. So I think my conclusion would be it's definitely not bad. I think it's good that we have regulations to have the set of rules that we need to operate within. But it can be challenging sometimes.
Christina, do you also have a lot to do with sanction regimes in your line of work?
Well, yes. I mean, we don't have a specific person following sanctions, because obviously it depends on the size of the organization and obviously proportionality. But I think that technology is helping in the sanctions run, because obviously automation and automated sort of screening is being done every day. So without it, I think it would be humanly impossible, unless you have sort of a department or an army of people doing the searches manually. So obviously there's no room for error here. I mean, compared to AML, I think obviously there is sort of some sort of safety net, in the sense of you can sort of report, and then you can have sort of the local enforcement help you and support you with the sort of investigation. But I think in sanctions, there's no support if you get it wrong. I mean, the organization is in trouble.
Yeah.
So obviously, I would say that there's obviously employee training and awareness, obviously to remind everyone the importance of sanction screening, not just on the customers, even on the suppliers that you deal with, especially through transaction monitoring as well. That, in my opinion, needs to be automated as well, to check all parties involved in every transaction.
Ingrid, do you also have to do with sanction-related crimes in your field, or maybe not crimes, but sanction-related cases?
Speaking about the whole crypto sector, absolutely. Speaking about Bitonic, we don't encounter it a lot, because our customer base is mostly in the Netherlands. But we are always checking our customer base against the sanctions lists. So it is a constant it's a constant within Bitonic. Yeah.
Yeah, constant monitoring of your customers, the
Yeah.
ongoing monitoring.
Absolutely, and I agree with Christina. It's without the help of all kinds of technology, it would be impossible. But that helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right.
And I think
It's
also
very
what
interesting.
you can see is if you look at other fields like AML, you see a lot of criminal cases, which can be helpful to dive deeper into the behavior. But if you look at sanctions, you don't see a lot of criminal cases. So it's more seen as a tick the box exercise. We need to screen, we need to use automation, but it doesn't have the same feeling, at least, or experience than you see with combating money laundering. But of course, there's a lot of overlap between those. And luckily, lately, if you look at least in the Netherlands, but also other countries, there are more developments into the actual prosecution of people that are not compliant with sanctions legislation, or actually not complying in general with those sanctions. And also, we see an interesting development in Europe. I think in one of our previous webinars, we touched upon the EPPO, the European Prosecutor's Office. There are discussions now ongoing in Brussels to give them also an additional authority to also investigate and prosecute cases that are not in line with the restrictive measures in the EU. So that will be an expansion of their current authority. So that's an interesting development, I think, to follow.
What do you think is the most important thing that compliance professionals like us can do to stay ahead of the curve in the fight against financial crime? I would like to start with Christina.
Yes, I would definitely recommend to engage in professional development. So, because obviously you'll stay informed and updated with the upcoming regulatory changes and emerging technologies, and also it helps in your professional growth, and especially in this area, it's you never know too much. You can always keep learning, because obviously it helps to maintain a global perspective on what's happening around you, not just in your country. So it's very important. I believe that one sort of attends workshops and participate in training programs.
All right. Awareness and programs, training for the employees. Very interesting. And what do you think, Pierre?
Well, I think the bottom line is to stay curious. As I mentioned before, it's a lot of crimes are not per se new, but you have a lot of variations on existing crimes, and of course new developments like technology. So stay curious in how it's actually being done. Look into the behavior. That will help also to prevent it from happening. And of course, it can never be a 100% prevention, but at least we can do our best to understand how they work, and that will definitely be helpful into be more preventive, more effective in preventing financial crime from happening. And besides that, of course, reach out to people. I think I agree also with Christina. Follow workshops, go to events like conferences, talk to other compliance professionals, sharing knowledge and experience. I think that's definitely the way to go.
All right. And last but not least, Ingrid?
Yeah, and I have to agree with the previous speakers. Like Christina mentioned, stay informed. I think that's my first point. And as Pierre mentioned, stay in touch with key players and your colleagues in the field, and share information.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, with this, we conclude the session. Once again, I would like to thank our panelists for their insights into the emerging trends in financial crime. It is clear that this is a complex and challenging area, but it is also one that is increasingly important, and compliance plays a vital role in protecting our financial system from crime. Thank you, Ingrid, Christina, and Pierre. And thanks to our viewers and listeners for tuning in. Till next time.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.